Craig here, and today we're going to talk about the gear I use to record and video drums when I record them in the studio. Hey, Craig here from Craig Colley Music. Thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to talk about the equipment that I use when I shoot videos while I'm recording drum tracks. So first I'm going to start with an overview of what the drums look like. And I got a handheld here, so I'm going to hopefully keep it as steady as possible. I use a V-drum, an old V-drum set, just for triggers. And I have multiple heads and cymbals and trigger units from many, many years ago. This one's actually probably 30 years old, and this one's been around a while. The whole kit is probably a good 10, 15 years old. I use a Roland TD8 brain or head on it, and I only use it for the triggers. I also use an old Alexis, believe it or not, this thing must be 30 years old, this old D4 unit, because it had the ability to plug in, I think, 16 triggers. So I've used that for triggering drum sounds because I've got too many inputs from this kit here for the Roland to handle. It only has a certain number. Then I also have the kick drum down here, and a hi-hat pedal and a second kick drum. So I can have double kicks as well. And they're all triggered through this unit here. But before I do that, I want to show you that I have a keyboard set up that turns the sequence on and off. Also a mouse that's right here in the setup, and a screen. Now this is always set up, so anytime I sit down to play, I've got all this stuff all ready to go. And I also have a set of speakers set up so that I can also have with a subwoofer. It's down in the corner over there. Kind of hard to see. Maybe we can get a shot this way. An old Altec Lansing subwoofer. So I utilize a lot of equipment that I've had throughout the years. I've had big production studios. I've had retail stores, and I accumulated all sorts of gear and paraphernalia in the process of it. Hi-hat here. Side stick, snare, 4 toms, and on this 4 trigger pad that I have, an old Roland trigger pad, I have the ride in the middle. I've got the bell here, I've got a crash here, and I've got a choke cymbal here. So all in all, I can have a lot of control that way. Then I've got crash cymbal, crash cymbal, crash cymbal there as well. Also have double kicks, so I can have double kick drums as well. And then into the actual software that I use Digital Performer 10, and I use Toontracks Superior Drum 3 for the drum sounds. I'm not going to get into that kind of gear today, but I'm just giving an overview of what I use. So it's Motu Digital Performer 10 as a software, and Superior Drums. And I have done a lot of work getting these drum sounds tuned in and working the way that they sound, the way they work. And it took forever to do this, probably well over a month setting this up. And then when the drums come in, they have their own mixer built into the Superior Drummer 3. Also, I have them separated into different outputs that go into Digital Performer directly, which is over here. And let me pull up my mixer here. And you'll see that I've got the kick here, and I've got the snare in this channel, hi-hat here, and then toms are all in one stereo bus, and overheads and crashes and so on. Then I also have it set up where I've got a mix of just the kick, snare, and toms and one fader here, giving it a side chain, meaning that it has the kick, snare, and tom doubled, so I can have more control over that, into a master bus. And then from there, add effects. These have some effects that are in the mixer from Superior Drummer 3, and I do use some of those because they sound really good. And I'm also always looking at the performance of the computer, because if you're used to using plugins, you know they can be very, very taxing on your system. And if I show you this here, you can see that Superior Drums is not using a great deal, but I use a ton of plugins, and once you start getting loaded up with plugins, then you can have some serious issues. This monitor is a smaller, it's not a widescreen, so I have to change my screen perspective, which makes it a little more limiting as to what I can see. But when I'm programming drums, this is typically the view, and I don't do a lot of editing here. I just record them in, and if I play a little bit of this, down here are the drum parts I had just recorded on this last track. And next thing coming with this song is going to be editing these tracks and tightening them up a little bit. We've already done the piano and the bass, so we're adding drums now. So that is how the drums are configured. As far as the sounds and what the ultimate end product will sound like will be varied a little bit, but we have the basis of it, and it's a really nice, tight, well put together drum set that I can rely on, and I can always change sounds, and as long as my triggering was in place. The thing I had the most trouble with was getting this hi-hat. Let me turn that up a little bit. You hear a lot of tapping. I actually used the one that was inside this for a while, and then used everything else in the kit. But this was really tough to get that to work right. But I finally did. It's still super sensitive, and I'm still not 100% used to it. So that is the drum set. Back up here and give you an overview of it from a distance. So once again, I've got the double kicks, the hi-hat pedal there, and then the 4 toms, side stick. And by the way, these are separate samples. This snare does have a triple sensor in it, so you can hit the middle, hit the edge, and hit a rim shot. And to be careful, because a lot of times you just tend to hit this and it triggers not a fatter sound in the track, so a lot of times you got to go back and edit that out, which is kind of a pain. But you can't, and you cannot get the rim shot. If you hit this sound, the rim shot doesn't work. It's the same sound. You have to hit the edge and then the rim to get the rim shot. It's kind of strange how that's programmed, but that's how it's set up as far as I've been able to use it so far. If you have any suggestions on that, I would love it. I also know that you are able to set it so the side stick is like this, but I could never get all 4 zones to work right on this particular set, so I just opted to have a side stick separate since I had an extra pad. Plus, since it's its own sound, I can control that side stick sound and also the reverb on it, any effect I want to put on it. So I want to keep that as flexible as possible. So that's the drum set. And let's talk a little bit about how I have the video set up on this. I use what's called an ATEM ISO Extreme Pro, which is this unit here. And this has 8 channels for 8 different cameras. Over here is my monitor. You're going to see me in the monitor itself, but I'm going to roll through. That's camera 1, it's camera 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And these are previews of each camera. That's a preview before it goes live, and then that's the actual live output. And all of that records to a hard drive and has 8 separate channels for all of the different cameras, full HD quality, and the audio is separate as well. On the audio side, I have everything running out of my Mark of the Unicorn DAW workstation that routes into this ATEM, into one of the inputs here, and then I have a VO coming into the second input here. Actually, the first input is the VO, the second input is the music, and that's a whole nother tutorial, just how I got that there. Did incorporate this recently, which is a noise reducer. The only downside of this, it does not have an XLR hookup. So noise and ground loops are major problems doing the sound with this particular setup so far. That's what I found, particularly when you're doing tutorials. I do have a 3-screen setup here for the main studio, and under here I've got my keyboard that pulls out when I'm using keyboard to record, and also these are modular, as well as the mouse and the keyboard here can pull out to make it easier to work on, because most of the work is done from here. I also have 4 sets of speakers. I've got this Marshall little mini amp that I use for a reference. I have some typical computer speakers here that I use for monitoring with a subwoofer. I've got these KRKs here, and I've got some original Oratones, and I've got it on 4 separate feeds so I can listen to all of them or them separately, so I get a really good mix of what it's going to sound like when I take it out in the field. As far as the cameras that I use, camera 1 is a Canon D50 Mark II using the original lens. The shot that this is taking right now is coming this way, which is this shot here. I'm in the way of it. That's that shot here. Now, unfortunately, I don't have 8 of these. I wish I did, or 8 matching cameras. So I've been kind of strapped with what cameras I'm going to use. So camera 2 is an iPhone 6 that's hooked up to a software called Filmic, which allows me to have a remote view of what that looks like, and I'll show that to you just in a moment. I'm on the ATEM first, and then we'll come back to that. My third camera is this old Sony here, and I say this old Sony worked great when you use it on FireWire, but the HDMI, because it's an older unit, was not up to the specs of today's standard, and it doesn't shoot a great picture. It's an incredibly expensive camera that I can't really use for anything really serious except just B-roll or shots like I'm shooting here, which is it's just coming in and capturing the screen, which is this shot here. So it's all grainy and it looks terrible. But if it's just a fill shot, I'm using it for now because that's what I have. So that's camera 3. Camera 4 is a GoPro here coming down, which is giving me this shot here. So an overview of this, and the camera's actually twisted upside down. A couple crazy mounts there that I have figured out how to work this into a small space. Then the 5th camera is mounted, in this case, over the drums, shooting back at me at this direction. So when I was narrating, that was the shot that was coming in the narration shot. Also, I had a cube light above it to give it a little more light coming down this way. And also in this room here, I also had another light that was mounted right here, shooting it out, so I had lights coming on to my face when I was shooting. Also, always have a little chalkboard, a little dry eraser board with my notes so that I remember what to say. And I try and put it as close to the camera as possible so I'm not looking away too much. I do have a teleprompter that goes over the D50 lens, but I didn't use that on this shoot today. It's only when I really had to read a lot of content if necessary. So that is camera 5. Camera 6 is actually the screen. It's a screen capture of this screen. Now I've got this where I've got to show it on this monitor. I've got it on that monitor. Also, when I'm doing recording in this room here, in the vocal booth, in the guitar booth, I have it on this monitor as well. Now, because these are older monitors, they have to be set to a different display size, which makes the screen size smaller, which is kind of a pain, but it's a workaround. On camera 7, which is camera 7 here, is a close-up of the kick drum, and that camera is positioned down here. This one down here is another iPhone 6, and by the way, this camera is also an iPhone 6, so at least I have 3 cameras that are the same, and they definitely record better than this $3,000 or $4,000 at the time camera, which is really disappointing, but that's what it is. So how I switch when I'm sitting here in this position is I use a software by a company called Mix Effects Pro, and this just came out. This thing is, and you have to have, so new that the latest operating system, which is OS 14, requires it for this thing to work. It's a remote control for my Extreme Pro to have over here, because if I'm in a different position or anywhere I am, now I can control it from anywhere. And I do a lot of things moving around in the studio. So if I can push camera 2 and look over there, I can switch camera 2. And if I push camera 1, I can switch it. I'm doing everything here. I also have a series of macros set up, so which are in this row here. So when I push macro 1, it changes to that shot. Macro 2 goes to that shot. Macro 3, got to hit the right button, goes to that shot. Then I have a series of looping shots when I'm actually recording so that it actually will capture this in real time. And then when I go into the editing process, because the way that this software works with DaVinci 17 that I use by Blackmagic, same company who makes the ISO Extreme, then it's easy for, there I am there, hello. Then it makes it easy to edit these later, and a lot of things are pre-done. And you can also have it on a loop. And if I hit this, it will repeat it. Then I've got three other series of moves that are, this is fast, medium, slow as far as how often the camera changes its angle. So that's how I program all of the cameras. As far as the setup and balancing of the different cameras, that's tough to do because they're all different. So I can get it close, but in time I'll hopefully get cameras that match to make that a lot easier in that process. Another thing I wanted to show you is on this controller here, really important that you use a wired Ethernet connection, which I've got this adapter here. I'll put a link in the show notes. Goes to a Cat 5 that hooks up to this adapter here, which is a Lightning to a USB, and it does require power. Sometimes you get these units, if you don't power them separately, they don't work. So this converts a Cat 5 internet signal into a USB, into the iPad to connect the switcher through its own interface here. I'm going to disconnect it and reconnect it. You put in the IP address, set it to a static IP, hit that, hit this to connect, and then you have all the different settings. I'm not going to go into all the details of this, but very important that you have that set up, because I tried it through Wi-Fi and it didn't work at all. It disconnected constantly, particularly when you're doing a video shoot. It was horrible. So be sure you use this type of adapter or something similar, and you have to have OS 14.5 for this to work. One other thing, you have to select Ethernet through your settings. What I found is if you just plug it in, it automatically goes to it and knocks the Wi-Fi out. Something else I was going to show you is a software called Filmic, and that's what I use to capture all these iPhones and control them remotely. So I'm going to show you that now. Now, before I was showing you that this was an Ethernet connection, but now I actually want to unplug it, because I'm now going to show you the Filmic software, which is the remote software for the 3 cameras that I have. And I just have them labeled randomly for what I know they are. So I'm going to take that camera over there in the corner, and that camera I call CC iPhone, which is that camera over there. And now I can control that from here. So I can actually control the brightness of the shot. I can also control the focus through this ring here. And I can also control the zoom of the shot. There, I can zoom in and out on it. And it's a very handy interface to have. And if I hit this button up here, then it goes back and I can go back and select other cameras. So if I was to select the one down by, let's say down by the kick drum, bring that one up, and there's my kick drum. And I also, in this particular shot, I needed to use a little extra light on it because it was down low, so it's got the ability to turn the light on and off on the camera. If I want to turn it brighter, I can turn it up much brighter. So it has the ability to do that as well. Not a tutorial on all the features of this right now, but just wanted to show you what I actually use when it comes to using the iPhone cameras. So it's called Filmic Remote, and Filmic Pro are the 2 softwares I use for that. On the audio side, I use this lav mic here. It needs its own power, so I use this old Tascam here. And what's nice about this unit here is that it has an input and output, and then that plugs into the ATEM over here. And that's how I bring in my VO for this. Now, there's a lot of noise generated from all the things that are going on here, and cell phones also definitely generate noise, and computer speakers do. Everything reacts to each other. So there's a lot of ground problems that I've come across, but got it pretty clean. And to help with some of that, in some of the recordings And the settings I can put into the ATEM Extreme has the ability to put noise gates on, compressors, limiters on every channel, and which I use gates on everything to turn them down automatically when they're not being used, so it avoids any kind of extra noise. Sometimes you just can't avoid it. One last thing I do want to mention is these headphones that I've been using, these Avantone Multi-Mode Headphones. What's cool about this is a lot of emphasis on mid-range recording now. And this actually has a switch that lets you switch to a more mid-range sound, or stereo or mono, right on the headphones, which is really handy. The one thing that I found though is that typically when you go to the mid-tone setting, the volume is much lower. So oftentimes you got to turn the headphones up, and if you forget and you go back to stereo, you get blasted. So a note there that it doesn't happen on all audio, but I'd say 90% of it, that's been my experience with it. But they sound great. They're a little heavy, they're a little bulky, but it's all about the sound. And when you're trying to do something, you know, on a serious level, sound is obviously everything. So that's our overview of how I did the audio and the video recording on the drum track on this last song, and what I use in all songs. If you have any questions about this, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you're here for the first time or visiting again and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. And make sure you ring the bell. And that way I'll let you know when new videos are coming out, and also when we go live and do some shoots that way as well. And if you have any questions, comments, I would love to see those in the comments, and I would be happy to answer any questions that I can. If you want some one-on-one consultation, I do that as well, because there's so much technology that goes on in this little room. The way I have this thing configured, this is years and years of having big rooms to small rooms to big rooms to small rooms. And now I've got this room just packed full of all sorts of fun stuff that I'm rolling out here as we're doing these videos and this new channel that I've created. And this is Craig Colley signing off from Craig Colley Music, and I look forward to shooting some more videos and putting them out to you real soon. Take care. We'll see you next time. And once again, I'm the guy who has to turn this off, so I'll turn it off now. Bye.